When I look at the Department of Education, it's almost like I'm watching a volcano. You're getting these reports that, you know, the thing is building and the ground has risen like 3 feet in the last year. Because to me, the Department of Education is where the most immediate racial resentment is going to have to be dealt with on one level or another. They're going to have to ignore it, they're going to have to pretend it's good, or they're going to have to change it. Because it's the Department of Education that sends the bureaucrats along with the Department of Justice to school districts around the country. And if you have any disparity between white children and black children, that means that's there for one reason only, that is white race. This was a favorite theme of lots and lots of people in the Obama administration, including the big man himself, President Obama, because whenever they talked about, school discipline, Obama would always take, go to the most extreme point, which is, a perfectly kind of like valid thing to do. And he would go, yeah, even kids under 6 are being expelled and suspended disproportionately. I mean, under 6. Well, that's what this, it's hard. It's hard for Obama to grasp. It's hard for anybody except for a teacher to grasp the enormous level of misbehavior and criminal behavior and assaults and all sorts of other bad things that students and teachers, from black students to lots of other people in black schools. And here's a good example of it, of violence and denial.
Good evening. 6 years old and handcuffed by Peel police in school. We continue with our extensive coverage of a story we brought you first, and it centers around a little girl cuffed at the ankles and the wrists. Police say they were keeping her safe. Her mother doesn't believe them.
No 6-year-old little girl deserves that. Like I don't know. Like, I'm ashamed for her. I'm like, I don't know. I tell her every day it wasn't her fault. Like, she's a good kid.
No one can ever recall a 6-year-old child being handcuffed by police in school before. But that is what happened to this mother's little girl in late September. The Mississauga school called police because she was uncontrollable. 2 officers ended up handcuffing her, first by the ankles, then by the wrists. She weighs less than 50 pounds.
I said to everybody, the superintendent of the school board, everybody, couldn't somebody speak up for my child and say it's not okay? It wasn't okay. Everybody's just like, they're the police. What were we supposed to do?
These pictures show a happy little girl working with her classmates in school.
And yet the child has had a troubled history at the school starting in junior kindergarten. The school called police twice before, and she has been suspended 4 times. Letters from the principal describe a child who punched a staff member and assaulted students in the class by kicking, hitting, and pulling their arms. No one has been able to say what triggered the behavior, but the mother's lawyers say cuffing her is inexcusable.
There's never, ever a situation where a 6-year-old should be handcuffed. Never. I would think that the folks that were there collectively could have came up with a solution that did not involve shackles.
Peel police say the officers were at the school dealing with the child for 30 minutes. They have not said how long they tried de-escalation techniques before handcuffing her. Would there not be any other way for 2 grown men to be able to handle a 6-year-old girl?
I think we got to take into, obviously, the officers are the ones who are taking in all the information in the situation, and they're constantly, going through their mind, what is the safest way that we can resolve this situation? In their mind, the safest way to de-escalate and begin that process was to restrain her.
The child's behavioral problems started as her mother began experiencing health problems, eventually being diagnosed with cancer. Her father passed away when she was 6 months old. Her mother says her daughter has never exhibited uncontrollable behavior outside of the school. In fact, now that she is in a new school, the behavior issues have completely stopped.
Only thing that goes to my mind is if I'm so hurt by it, like, how is my daughter feeling? because you won't even talk about it.
Now, the girl's lawyers are filing a complaint on her behalf with the Human Rights Commission, but there are still so many questions unanswered. And Adrian, you've been looking at whether or not the system has failed this child.
Yeah, lots of heated debate around our story tonight, as you well know. The big question being, how did it come to this? A 6-year-old girl in cuffs in her school. Tonight, we're getting a little perspective from the Peel Teachers Federation, a retired cop and Ontario's advocate for children and youth.
If you have a 6-year-old child in a school, which is supposed to, and we tell that child, this is a safe space, a community for you, and they're in distress, and then the police come in uniform and handcuff you, that's a traumatic event for a child.
Similar scenes from inside the U.S. show just how traumatic it can be. We spoke with a retired Toronto cop with more than 30 years' experience who says officers simply aren't trained to deal with situations involving a child this young.
Most of the use of force training that officers are given deal with when they're involved in actually arresting people for offenses. It is extreme. It is rare. When those officers are in that position at that time, they have to do what they can to ensure that that child is no longer a danger to herself or others, and handcuffing her is an extreme and last resort.
Is the system failing her?
Well, I don't want to say the system's failing her. The funding from the province simply isn't at the levels that we would, from FO's perspective, needs to be to provide those special services.
Just 2 weeks ago, the Elementary Teachers Federation released a report stating the provincial government must increase its funding for special education teachers, educational assistants, psychologists, as well as other therapists and youth workers.
And I don't want to hear it. That dance is over.
The provincial advocate for children and youth, Irwin Ellman, says the time for bickering over funding and resources for handling students needs to end.
And let this child and this situation be the time when people say, the promise of the school system and the lived experience of our students, all our students, the promise of our school system needs to be kept for all children, because we don't make promises to children and break them as adults.
So did he, the child and youth advocate, give any suggestions on how schools can handle young children like this who are in crisis with the resources they have?
He really said it comes down to putting the child first. If the child is at the center of the discussion, he's confident they'll find a solution.
Kids been busy. According to other local media sources, this kid's been suspended. She's only 6. Been suspended several times already since she was 4 for attacking kids, kicking kids, biting kids. They suspended her. They put her in cuffs because she was acting out, and the parent went and said, "Man, she never does that at home." We have a word for that in the journalism classes I teach from time to time. We call that a lie. If the people at the Department of Education looked around, they would see lots and lots more people are aware of the enormous chaos black students are creating in classrooms all over the country, whether they're in black schools, black on white schools, or whether just a couple of black kids in a big school. We've got teachers' unions talking about it. We've got yards and yards of former teachers talking about it. Every once in a while, one of the newspapers will do something on it. Investors Business Daily did a great job of exposing this from the very beginning. I've made my own modest contributions on White Girl Bleed a Lot and Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. There's tons and tons of stuff out there. I think in the St. Louis district, I reported in White Girl Bleed a Lot. No, this is Don't Make the Black Kids Angry. Sorry. In the St. Louis school district, like 40% of the new teachers quit on the first day. That's a chocolate school district. They quit because what they saw, the reality of what they saw, was so far from the theory and the fairy tale of what they learned in college that all these kids are just waiting for you to come in there, open up their little brains and sprinkle a little liberal philosophy so they can be happy and go, skipping and dancing into the future, all because of you. Well, that's just a fairy tale. The amount of chaos is enormous. Lots and lots of people want to sit here and talk about the causes and solutions of the chaos and the violence. As for me, I don't really care what made the black kids angry.